and welcome to the One of 20 podcast. My name is Jonathan. I am the host, executive producer, and the man behind the screen. So, the One of 20 podcast is a small community. It started out as me and my friends from my dance marathon, and then it kind of expanded to certain friends. But now that I have a little calm in my life, excuse me, my chronic cough. I'm growing my community. I'm reaching out to other creators, and I've noticed that a lot of creators in this day and age are parents because when I was 4, 5, 6 years old, we had the internet. Not that old where we didn't have the internet, but we had the internet. But all my mom really had was blogs. We didn't have Facebook. We didn't have Instagram. We didn't have TikTok. I don't even think TikTok was an idea. And that's how I got my start was TikTok. I mean, I'm like a micro influencer. People reach out to me for like brand deals, but I don't have millions of followers. I have like 5,000 followers. But these parents are able to tell their children stories. And what I love about these parents that I'm seeing and that I'm reaching out to and I'm collaborating, connecting with, is that they're giving their child a voice. I'm not saying that my mom didn't, but they're giving their child a voice and using the internet to their advantage. They're not just going online and saying, this is my perfect life and like, this is like my white walls and my white furniture and my kids that are wearing Ralph Lauren from top to bottom. No, they're sharing their experiences with rare disease and having a child and being a caretaker of someone who has rare disease. And a lot of the content creators also that have rare diseases themselves are keeping it real. And this isn't to say that I don't love family vloggers. I do. I have my qualms, but what I appreciate about the rare community so much is that they're keeping a honest and truthful narrative. They're telling their stories authentically. They're showing the day to day. And I wish I had that back then because you can ask my mom, she'll be the first to admit, hell, I'll be the first to admit that when I was sick as a child, and I didn't know I had a rare disease until I was 20 years old, but when I was sick as a child in school, I was embarrassed. I used to lie. I don't condone lying, but I used to lie and say, oh, I had the flu. Oh, I had strep throat. I never said what was wrong with me. And I was mortified by the fact that I thought my teachers were going to tell the other kids in the class that I was in the hospital. I hated it. I hated the attention. I was so not confident and scared and timid. And I wish I could tell that 6, 7-year-old little boy who's in second grade that it's going to be okay, that you'll have a voice one day. And these rare mamas and these rare dads and these caregivers and these people who are sharing their voice, thank you from the 6 and 7-year-old self, because I wish I had that voice. And my mom gave me that voice when I was a child. She did a lot of advocating. She did it through the newborn screening law, the March of Dimes, the Dream Come True. But thank you for being able to share it with a bigger audience. Because when you do things like my mom did, that was great. And it got attention. And I was on Fox News and NBC News. And that was great. But now you're using this everyday platform. And I just want to say kudos to you. And I can't wait to interact with you all and get to know your stories and the stories of the people that you're taking care of. And thank you to my mom, who was my caretaker. And buttoning this all up is that back to school is here. It's a little late, but it's here. Kids are getting adjusted back to school within the first month. And I have Dalton Hessel on the podcast today, otherwise known as Mr. Hessel or the Northern Nerd. Dalton's about a few years older than me, and he's a newer teacher. And for me, I hear him do his POVs or his videos, and they always say Mr. Hessel. So doing this interview, I wanted to call him Mr. Hessel, but I did not. I called him Dalton. And he was absolutely wonderful to interview. He just was so kind and so open. And he really talks about inclusivity in schools because those who are fortunate enough to go to school outside of the home, who voluntarily, I should say, want to go to school outside of the home, it's not always easy. And I wanted to have a conversation with an educator about inclusivity because for rare people like myself and so many other people who are rare and chronically ill or who are on the autism spectrum or have a disability, going back to school is never easy because you're in the comfort of summer, you're at home with your loved ones, And then you go back to school and it's like you're starting your nightmare all over again. That's how it was for me, at least for a very long time. But I had the best conversation with Dalton. He is wonderful. I'm going to plug all of his stuff on the social media, on my social media, excuse me, and just take a listen, take what he has to say, because he just is absolutely wonderful. And I cannot give him enough higher praise. No further ado, introducing Dalton Hessel, aka Mr. Hessel, aka the Northern Nerd. I hope you enjoy as much as I did. So, welcome back to the 1 of 20 podcast. It is our back to school episode, as I mentioned. I'm here with Dalton Hessel, otherwise known as the Northern Nerd. Welcome, Dalton.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course, it's so weird calling you Dalton because I feel like in your videos you say Mr. Hessel. So in my head, I'm like, Mr. Hessel. So can you just kind of like walk me through how you got like onto TikTok and like how you balance being like a school teacher and doing TikTok? I know it started out with like the Delta Pizza Monster Truck Boys. So kind of just walk me through that. That was very interesting to me. And I loved hearing all about it, seeing like the stories that you had and everything.
Yeah, so how I got started on TikTok was, well, like most people, during COVID, during lockdown and everything like that, kind of got interested in, all right, what is this platform all about? I heard people talking about it, but what is it all about? So for a while, I was just kind of like a student of TikTok, and just kind of seeing how people interacted with it and how they created content. Because I've been like, I liked making videos before TikTok and things like that, kind of for YouTube, but then also just for my own personal stuff, like whether I was at on a school field trip back in like middle school or high school or things like that. So creating video stuff has always been a part of what I've done. But I guess how I kind of got on TikTok was how I started creating was more so like with Northwoods of Wisconsin stuff in mind. Then I was starting to see more and more teachers go onto the platform. And I was like, oh, what if I can just share stories from the classroom? Because being a second grade teacher, like there's never a dull day in your life. Like your students are gonna say the craziest stuff, and it doesn't matter like if you've been teaching for, if it's your first year of teaching or if you've been teaching for like 20 years plus, there's always going to be something with each and every new group of kids that you have. So I just started sharing kind of quotes of the day on there, but then also trying to talk about either like teacher tips or tell stories from the classroom, or just try to bring humor to what the teaching profession is all about. But the Delta Pizza Monster Trucks got started when this year I had, or this past year, I had 8 boys and 3 girls in my classroom. And to start off the school year, I actually only had 2 girls. The third girl joined the second quarter of the school year. But there was, both of my girls were gone. Like the first 2 weeks, one had COVID, and then one had some family stuff going on at that time. So it was just me and all my boys walking down the hallway. And one of the teachers in the hallway passage was like, you guys look like a fraternity. And so from that point on, we're like, all right, we got to come up with a frat name and things like that. So came up with Delta Pizza Monster Truck. And then we also had the Capital Rainbow Unicorns for the girls as well.
Oh my, that's hysterical. And that's also awesome. You said 11 kids in your class?
11 kids. Yeah, it was a really small class size that year.
That's crazy to me because when I went to school, I had about 20 and I thought that was small. Are you teaching in the town that you grew up in?
Yeah. Yep. I'm teaching in the town I grew up in. The second grade teacher that I had is still teaching there, and so I work with her now.
I was gonna ask, that's awesome. Oh my God. So do you like being in a small town, do you kind of get to know like all of the families and their students? Do you think you have like a different advantage because you're in a smaller community? Like you see them out at the grocery store, you see them out at like the movies. I can imagine you have a lot of bump ins. So is it like the kind of town where like there are like families that stay there for generations and you kind of get to know each other? What's the dynamic like compared to, like you say, a bigger school? I don't know if you student taught somewhere else during your college years or what that's like, or what does it look like teaching in such a small town?
Yeah, the best way I could describe it would be like teaching within the confines of like a Hallmark movie. Like it's that small town feel where you're like, oh hey, like when I first was showing my girlfriend around town, before she became my wife, I was just like, oh, let's go on a night walk kind of thing. And we went on this walk and I had to wave at so many like cars because I knew so many people on our night walk.
Right.
But it's, yeah, just the joys of that, like seeing people like you mentioned out at the grocery store. You can kind of have a parent teacher conference while you're buying frozen pizza or something like that. So it's, I really like it, and come to have enjoyed the family connections that you get to make throughout the years and things like that.
Absolutely. That's awesome. I know I have a few good teachers that were like that. I grew up in a small town, not 2,000 people, but I have a few teachers who I saw or who had kids in the community, or because we have like where I live, we have like a main road where like the Costco and like the fast food are, but then a lot of it's just like residential or farmland. So it's very similar. Not 2,000 people, as I said, but still to that extent. And why did you go into education? Did you know from like a young age that you wanted to work with younger kids? Is like second grade the lowest you can go? I know first grade and kindergarten's more of a different breed, but like how'd you get into education? What inspired you? Was it someone or something? What's your journey with education?
Yeah, that's a great question. So from an early age, I actually wanted to be like a ESPN broadcaster. I grew up watching like ESPN Sports Center in the morning, just with a bowl of cereal kind of thing. But then, as I got closer to the end of like my high school career, I was like, all right, what can I actually see myself doing and having the greatest impact? Like, I just want to make an impact. So I decided to change from like journalism and go into elementary education because I'm actually the only male educator in the primary school where I teach. So there's not that many males that go into elementary education. You see it more in like middle school or high school, but there's not that many male elementary school teachers. So that was one of the main reasons why I got into teaching, but also because of Boy Meets World and Mr. Feeney. Like I wanted to be someone's Mr. Feeney, and like that kind of was the driving force behind why I got into teaching as well. But also all the impressionable teachers that I had when I was a kid and the impact that they left on me. Like I wanted to be that for somebody else too. So yeah, I just really enjoyed it and I'm so glad that I got into it.
That's absolutely incredible. I know I can think of one of my male teachers that did that for me. I was actually at his house for dinner last night, and that was my next question. Actually, do you think that being the only male teacher has an impact? Because I know that in this generation, compared to past generations, like how we grew up, boys on the playground were on the tougher side, boys didn't really show emotion. Do you think now that you're a primary school teacher, you teach at that age where they're kind of developing their emotions, they're kind of figuring out who they are to some extent, because they're going from kindergarten to first grade where they're learning their ABCs, now they're reading chapter books, and now they're doing more things, they're beginning that stages. Do you think being a male teacher and is obviously for female students, they have female role models. I'm not saying you can't be for female students, but do you think for your male students in particular, you're kind of someone that they can look up to and you can kind of like to a certain degree role model certain things for them so that they can be like they can just develop and not because sometimes I know for me, I had all female teachers until I was in middle school. And I always secretly wanted a male teacher because I kind of wanted that male impact. Do you think that your students in the past have gotten more of an impact of having you as a male teacher and like having that constant everyday interaction with the male teacher? You could be like cheerleader, supporter, whatever. So, what's your take on it all?
Yeah, I think it's important to show my students like the different sides of myself. So I have like a goofy side when I teach lessons, or I'll have like sometimes like when you're reading a story, it might get emotional. Like the end of Charlotte's Web, when Charlotte
Oh, yeah.
finally like she passes away. I'm like, I want the students to see like it's okay for a man to like have emotions other than like anger and sternness and being tough and things like that. Like I want to show that it's okay for that to take place. So I think like trying to be that model for them, like somebody that is willing to play with them at recess and just get to know them better on a personal level through that. Like there's so much that you can learn about your students by like just whether you comment on like their t-shirt, like if they have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles t-shirt and you talk about like what their favorite character is, or you're playing tag at recess, or fill in the blank here, but like you're allowing yourself to be that role model and that person that they can look up to and have those kind of conversations with. Like if something is tough at home, like they're gonna, if you have that relationship with them, they're gonna be willing to tell you that kind of stuff and maybe why they're feeling upset or why they're feeling sad. And that's something that I feel is really important to showcase as a teacher, is like to show those emotions and not be afraid to do that.
That's wonderful. And I wish I had a teacher like you when I was in second grade because I loved all of my teachers in elementary school. But unfortunately, they were all older women that were above the age of 60. And they were really great teachers. And I learned a lot and I got the best out of my education. But I feel like at some points there were days where we needed someone. And I still, if I see them in the street or I see them like in the grocery store, I'd say hello. But I feel like I needed someone who was a younger man to teach. And I know there's a teacher shortage going on right now. And I know there are so many different variables within the teaching profession. But was there one specific teacher for you that kind of sealed the deal? You were like, I want to be like them, male or female or whoever, just kind of someone that inspired you to be a teacher that you like have thanked in the past, that you're going to thank one day for a successful teaching career?
Yeah, I'd say it was probably, yeah, my second grade teacher, Mrs. Eugnis. She was one that like, I don't know, just the spirit she brings, like even today, like I'm inspired by her daily, like being able to like teach with her, because just like yeah, the spirit that she brings into the day and like her optimism, but then like also, I don't know, she's the one like always remember people's birthdays. She's the one that makes sure like we get together and like have lunch and like share community and things like that. And I always kind of want to be that person that just brings like, you walk into a room and you instantly feel relief because that person's in that room. And
Right.
like it makes you want to come to school rather than, oh, I don't know if I want to go today. It's like, I can't wait to go to school because what are we going to learn today? Or I just can't wait to see this person.
Oh, that's incredible, Dalton. That's absolutely incredible. And I feel like a lot of teachers I feel like it takes a special kind of person to really create that environment because you could be a teacher, but I feel like a lot of it is going above and beyond for your students. And I had so many teachers like that. I'll never forget. I had one teacher in first grade. Every Friday, we had French Friday. She studied in France back in college, and she used to teach us French on Fridays. The only thing I remember is bonjour, but I thought it was really cool at the time. Uh,
Yeah.
but how do you, with having a classroom with like with so many different students who probably have different levels of education and different like different learning styles, how do you like create an inclusive environment? I know obviously there are other resources in the building, like special education and things like that. But how do you, while tending to everybody's individual needs, how do you create an inclusive classroom? Do you like what's your like day to day as a teacher? How do you create an inclusive environment?
Yeah, I think it all begins with like going back to building those relationships with your students, like finding out what they're interested in. It could be something as simple as like, what's your favorite food? Down to like, what's your favorite superhero? Or what's your favorite song right now? And I'll like on Fridays, I'll have like music going during our math centers time, or we'll play air hockey. I got an air hockey table sent to me last year because of the whole fraternity and sorority thing. And so on Fridays, I'll play air hockey with my students. So I think like it starts with, yeah, getting to know your students and then like um, working some of your curriculum around that. So like if we have some math problems that we're doing on whiteboards, like if I know this one student is a huge fan of Sonic the Hedgehog, I'm going to work Sonic the Hedgehog into this word problem. So that way they're like interacting with something that they're really interested in, while at the same time doing math. And most of the time they won't even realize that they're doing the math. They want to figure out how is Sonic going to solve this problem, or how are they going to get like, how is Mario going to get this many coins more than Luigi, or something along
Right.
those lines. But I think it's really getting to know your students and then being able to, again, like work your curriculum around that and making sure everyone feels supported and included, and that you have a relationship with each and every student. Like, you know their first name, you know, like what things make them happy, what things get them like excited for school, and then tailor your classroom towards that.
That's a wonderful plan of action. It's kind of like, as I said, going above and beyond. You kind of just have to know your students, and it's probably easier. Did you student teach where you teach now, or did you do it like at a bigger school where you went to college? What was that like, and how was the transition between having those students and maybe a bigger town, small, like to a smaller town that you're in now?
Yeah, so I student taught at a little bit bigger school, but it wasn't second graders that I was dealing with. It was eighth graders. So that was a little bit different. I found out real quickly that I didn't want to teach middle school. I still made some great connections with majority of the students, but there was some where I was like, oh man, I don't know if I want to go today, kind of
Yeah.
thing. But bigger classes, it was like 25 kids per class, and I had three classes, so 75 students, and then just trying to manage that. But it was, and then so it was eighth grade and then fourth grade. And fourth grade, I'd say is pretty similar to second grade, with a lot of the things that we were doing. Besides, like, well, in second grade, I don't teach like multiplication or division, but did that in fourth grade. But I'd say that prepared me for like what I didn't want to do. So after teaching eighth grade English, I knew that I did not want to teach middle school. So that kind of crossed that off when it came time to start applying for jobs and things like that. Like, all right, if there was a posting for that, nope, I'm good.
Yeah, that,
But yeah, I'd say, well, my certification gets me from grades, like I can teach first grade all the way up to eighth grade. I think second grade's probably as low as I would go, but I'd probably only go as like high as fifth grade. So anywhere within those grades, I think I'd be okay. Um, so, but I'm just really happy that a job opened up when I graduated at the school where I went to school. So that was really cool and just really fortunate for me at that time.
well, that's fantastic. And it's probably like second nature being back to school. I don't know what the school, what like grades does your specific school? Is it like K through 8, K through 12, K through 5?
So it's so we have a 4K program now, so pre-kindergarten, and then it goes up to second grade.
Okay.
But it's the same exact way it was when I was a kid. It's very nostalgic. Like, the building probably hasn't changed too much since like 1970s, so it's still
Yeah.
got like brick walls and everything like that, and they got like these weird acoustic panels in the gym that are like orange and yellow and red. But we actually just got a referendum passed, so our building is going to change a little bit, so that'll be nice. Get some upgrades to the bathrooms and the gymnasium and the cafeteria and stuff like that. But so I'm excited for that. But I do like the feeling that it hasn't changed that much either, because it's just that comfortability and familiarity with everything.
That's very similar to what we have at our like in our town. We only have 4 schools in our town. We have primary, it's 2 elementary schools, but I consider one primary, the other one intermediate, then middle school and high school. And what they're doing is they're merging the primary and the intermediate schools. They're knocking down the intermediate school and they're moving all the primary kids up there, building a brand new school. But being in a small town, obviously there was a debate about it, naturally, because
Right.
they wanted to keep the old name of the intermediate school, and the kindergarten teachers were up in arms. They were like, well, what about us? What about the elementary school? What about the primary school? Because that made me instantly think of what you said, like it was built in 1970s, because the intermediate school currently is brick, hasn't been updated since like 1985. The cafeteria is also the gym and the auditorium.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very multi-purpose, but now in the back where the playground is, they're moving the playground, putting a new school there. It's supposed to be this like new, cool, like glass building. The teacher I was at dinner last night, he's actually the new principal there. He was telling me all about it. It's supposed to be like very state of the art. It's like very cool. And our other one, the primary school was built in 1938, so it's pretty old. They're making it the library because we have like the very stereotypical New England town, the white church, the library next door, the white school. It's called Center School, ironically, and then we have a church across the street. Um, but those were my best memories I had. I mean, I had the best teachers, and something about me is I was on special education from kindergarten to eighth grade. And I always wondered, how do you as a teacher, I don't know if you've had, I'm assuming you've had students in the past, and I know it's a very sensitive topic, but when you know you have a student who's on an IEP or a 504 who has accommodations, I've always wondered, how do you as a teacher, do you just kind of meet with the parent on the side? Do you kind of just pull the student aside and say, if they're functioning enough to say like, hey, like, how do you want to go about this? Do you like give the student like the lead and then you follow? Like, what's like, how do you go about it?
Yeah, so we'll have like our IEP meeting. So that'll include like all the specialists and some of the aides, and then the student, well, not the student, but their family members, and just talk about different ways where the student can be the most successful. So having those conversations about like what's worked well for the families and things at home, but then also taking the information that we get from like the specialists and things like that, and how you can best serve this student in your classroom. So those are really helpful to have, because I feel like without that, if uh, you'd be, I don't know, you wouldn't be putting yourself in the best situation, and that student wouldn't be in the best situation. So I'm glad that we have those meetings pretty annually to discuss like things that are working well and then things that could be improved as far as the classroom goes.
That's great because I remember I had those meetings. I didn't go in them until like seventh or eighth grade, but I remember having those. And do you think there is? So I remember for me, I had a plethora of medical issues, as I told you prior to us meeting. And people who listen to the podcast know, and I was always so timid about it because there's just a certain, no matter what, when you are 7, 8 years old, everybody's at your level. Like you just think that everybody's the same. And do you kind of just ease the students in? You kind of just like emphasize to some degree that we all like have our differences, but we're all like, we're all unique in our own different ways, no matter what, just to kind of make everybody feel comfortable. Because I know for a lot of students, me included, that going back to school wasn't always the easiest thing. And I thought about this last night when you and I were going back and forth, is that I used to get this nervous cough. I used to go for the first 2 weeks of school because I was so
Mm-hmm.
nervous. How do you just kind of go about that, and just like, how do you make your students feel comfortable enough to kind of put all of that behind them on the first day of school?
Yeah, that's a great question. I talk about, I try to model to my students like our class as like this family or as a team, and kind of talk about, I'm a big Packer fan. So I'll kind of give a lot of sports analogies to my students. Hopefully some of them pick up on it, others don't, but then I'll make like a superhero reference or something like that and bring it all back together. But I talk about how like on a team, you're going to have people that have um, different strengths, and like the quarterback isn't going to be the one to kick the ball, but you still need that kicker to make that play as well. Or how in Avengers, like the powers that Thor has are different than the powers that Iron Man has, but when they work together, they are able to accomplish what they set out to. So as we're going throughout our school day, we all have this mission. We're all going to bring our own special powers in to help accomplish that goal. And so I try to frame it in that way, to give that students like that ease of like, all right, well, maybe I'm not like that person over there, but I still have something to bring to the table and I can still contribute in my own special way. And I'm still going to set out to accomplish what I have in front of me.
Oh, I love the superhero analogies. I think those are my favorite because you all have like different superpowers. And I wish, like, way back when, that somebody explained it like that because I feel like that really puts a good perspective in. And especially being on the younger side of education, it's probably easier to some extent to kind of relate to your students. Nothing against older teachers. I've had fabulous teachers who are older, but I feel like being like kind of just in like the know of that age group is wonderful. And how do you balance doing TikTok? From what I've seen, you don't show your students, but do parents ever like, do they like praise you for having the TikTok, or is it kind of just something you do on the side, never really comes up? And the same thing with the school. How do you just go about that? Because I know there's a fine line between making sure that your students are protected, but also having your own personal autonomy and sharing what you love, because I know doctors do it, nurses do it, just other professionals do it. So how do you go about that?
Yeah. So whenever I create my TikToks, it'll either be like if I have some extra time like before school and I'm all set and ready to go, or after the students leave and I'm just kind of sitting around either grading papers or running copies or things like that. But I actually like self-conscious about it because like I'll shut my classroom door because even though I know like some of my team has left by that point and the hallways are mostly empty, I
Yeah.
don't need like our maintenance staff member like wheeling by a garbage cart and just like being like, so that's what Mr. Hessel's up to. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll usually shut my classroom door, but yeah, I try to keep my students out of it, just to kind of like, yeah, protect them. And then also like when I'm at school, I want to be like strictly in teacher mode and not focusing on like, all right, how can I make this into a video? How can I incorporate my students into a video? As much as I would like to have them in the video, I feel like I don't know, when I'm at school, I just want to be
Yeah.
like at school, and then afterwards, like, oh, here's something funny that happened from the day, or
Yeah.
this is how I can make it into a video. But I want to make sure that my students know like I'm in like just game mode right when I get to school, and ready to be like their teacher that they need. So, but as far as like parents' reaction goes, yeah, I have gotten some like parent like, was that quote from my kid or something like that?
Right.
Or was this about my son or daughter? So I'm pretty open with them and be like, yeah, that was definitely them. But then it's been cool, like the response that even my second grade team has given. Like they all have worn like my Northern Nerd shirt when we've been like out in the summer, like if we're grabbing dinner somewhere, like they support like my Northern Nerd stuff, but then also different community members or even people on TikTok, like buying the Delta Pizza Monster Truck shirts, the Kappa Rainbow Unicorn shirts, because that went all back into like my classroom and getting rugs and
Right.
getting all these different supplies that I wouldn't ordinarily have the money for, but then I was able to get those and help fund my classroom. So I think that was really cool that people came together to help support my classroom like that.
Absolutely. If you haven't, go check out Dalton on the Northern Nerd on Instagram, TikTok. You have a website too. Is it just the northernnerd.com?
Yep. Yep. Just the northernerd.com.
And what before we go, why don't you just like explain what the Northern Nerd is, what you do? I know you're a foodie, you rate movies, you have a little like you have a staff roster. Just kind of what's the Northern Nerd and what's your brand and what are you all about?
Yeah. So I started the Northern Nerd back in 2018. And it was just a way for me to, I wanted to have like a writing platform because I love writing as well. So it gave me a space to like just have, share a bunch of articles that I wanted to write, whether it was about like small town life or getting some of my friends to do like movie reviews or video game reviews or food reviews in the area. I wanted to be able to give people that like easy access. Um, our local paper does a great job, but I just wanted to give like a different perspective to some of that stuff. Um, and then I I wanted to also do like video stuff and photography from different events around the area. So that's kind of why I call it like geeking out in the Northwoods, because I'm at like all these different events, just the guy with the camera. um, yeah, I love documenting that kind of stuff. So truly for me, it's like trying to highlight where I'm from, the people that are in the area, and then promote community through that. So whether it's having like movie nights that are like outdoor movie nights, we did those for the past few summers. We just did the Sandlot on Wednesday with like my sister's youth group. So that was really fun. Um, and then doing like pizza parties, or we did like a pumpkin smash event last November 1st. Just people came to like this parking lot that was in the city and they just got to smash all these pumpkins that while I played like heavy rock music, And
That's so cool.
then we just, yeah,
Awesome.
that was a lot of fun. It was something we did back in college, and I was like, all right, how can I bring this to my hometown? So then just started that event. So we're looking to do that for the second year in a row this year. And then doing like skating parties in the winter. I just really love the community that I live in, and I just want to have like people enjoy being there with different community events to look forward to as well. So it's kind of a bunch of different stuff all together, just trying to have people create and collaborate and enjoy community. So that's the Northern Nerd in a nutshell.
Oh, that is so fantastic. I feel inspired about my community now. Oh, that's wonderful. We're very similar. I was a journalism minor. I do film and photography. I actually work for a film company. So we're very similar. And speaking of community, before we go, what's your future advice to young teachers who are considering going into the profession, especially teachers who want to work in special education or just young male teachers or just teachers in general? What's your best piece of advice or words of wisdom?
Best piece of advice. I would say that, just if you stay young at heart and find a group of people that you can rally around and just like either get advice from or just vent to that know like what you're going through, that's going to be pivotal. Like if you allow yourself to get like trying to be perfect each and every day, you're going to burn out super quick. So like your students want like to see you as like a real human. You're not a robot. Like you're not someone that's going to be always just nailing each and every lesson. Like learn from your mistakes and like bring them into the next day. Like learn from them and then improve upon your lesson the next day. But just know that it's not going to be perfect and that's okay. But as long as like you find joy in teaching and making an impact on young people, like you're changing the world. Like each and every day you have the opportunity to change the world and you have an opportunity to like impact the people that are around you. So whether it's your coworker or whether it's somebody in the street or whether it's your student, like you're changing lives. And if that doesn't make you feel good, if that doesn't like give you a purpose in life, like I love teaching. So that's the best way I can put it. Like,
Dalton,
yeah,
I
pursue it.
so inspired. This was absolutely fantastic. Go check him out. As I said, I'm going to link everything in the Instagram, the TikTok, and the YouTube. The Northern Nerd, he is wonderful. He is changing the youth of America. Dalton, thank you so much. I'm on. That was absolutely wonderful. I've been posting all week different sound bites and things like that from my interview with Dalton. And it's honestly, even though it's not about rare disease specifically, it just kind of makes me feel that if I was in a classroom when I was in second grade like his, not that I didn't love my teacher, I loved her dearly, and she's still a family friend of ours, but I would feel so comfortable. It just seems like such a warm and welcoming environment. And something I'm going to start doing on this podcast is talk about A Pocket of Peace, which was created by Nabella Noor. And I think this is really important because someone like Nabella, she has her own story, and I look up to her immensely. Her pockets of peace are little days, little moments through her days that talk about the joy in her life. And honestly, for me, I've been looking forward to this interview. So, recording this today has been my pocket of peace. And I have so much exciting content coming. I'm going to update you guys about my health. I'm going to give you an update about my life and so much more. So, this was a shorter interview. This was a shorter episode. But I am so happy through my crazy work schedule and everything that I'm getting back on track with the podcast. My tribe, you are small, but you are mighty, and I appreciate you all. And I hope you enjoy the rest of September. And you're going to see great content from me. I'm going to be all over social media. So for now, stay well, stay healthy, and stay rare. And remember, this is rare content for everybody because I'm a rare content creator, but it's for everybody on the internet. So take that with you, and I will see you guys next week. Have a good week, everybody. Stay well, stay healthy. And if you still want to, wear your mask. Bye, everybody.